Walsh here for our weekly Chairman's Update. We moved things around in the office a little bit and moved the office a little bit. We're still in Bellevue, but moved to a different space in the office complex where we were. And you'll notice some of the background from before, and some of it's a little new. But it's been a busy few weeks, as I've been telling you. The last 3 or 4 weeks, there's been a lot going on. The big news, just today, of course, is that the president's big, beautiful bill, the large and multi-part budget reconciliation bill that was bouncing around in Washington, D.C., has passed the legislature there. It passed the U.S. Senate and now the U.S. House. There was some parliamentary maneuvering that went on, but the bill has passed both chambers and now goes to the president's desk, and it's a great win for the president, Donald Trump. This was a budget reconciliation bill that he's been promoting and supporting all along. No reconciliation bill is perfect. And as I've been saying all along, in Washington, D.C., they've been using these reconciliation bills and temporary ongoing resolution bills instead of running proper budgets. It's been almost 20 years since the federal government in D.C. has passed a true budget. They use these temporary pieces of legislation instead, and it's not a good thing. I believe ultimately we need to get back to doing real budgets in Washington, D.C. But given the cards in front of him, President Trump has done as well as anyone could do to put together one of these temporary budget agreements that does a lot that's good. Now, here in Washington, we've been hearing a lot of hysterical rhetoric from the left screaming that this reconciliation bill is going to result in millions of people dying. It's almost childlike how silly their arguments have been. What it does do, among many things, is cut some spending in the Medicaid program. Now, it doesn't cut Social Security, it doesn't cut Medicare, but it does cut some fraudulent and abusive spending in the Medicaid program. Remember, Medicaid is a hybrid program funded mostly with federal dollars. They're still your money. It's taxpayer dollars, but flowing through D.C. Funded primarily by taxpayer money flowing through Washington, D.C., but administered by each of the individual states. Here in our Washington, we call the Medicaid program Apple Health. And it is administered in our state by the Health Care Authority, HCA, which is part of a division of the Department of Social and Health Services, DSHS. But the Health Care Authority runs our Apple Health program. This includes traditional Medicaid, which is health insurance, health benefits, originally narrowly targeted to people who were disabled, who were very poor, or who were otherwise specially needy, single moms with multiple children or even one child, people who have been disabled and can't work, and some older people who meet certain financial thresholds also can get Medicaid. It's the safety net for healthcare coverage. Recently, in the last couple of decades, we've expanded Medicaid, and here in Washington, expanded it more aggressively than in most states, to include people who are not disabled, to include people who are not single moms or older people, to include just about anybody who asks to be covered by Apple Health here in Washington. And in the process, we've diluted the benefit in Apple Health, in our Medicaid program here in Washington State. And the ones who've suffered for a long time because of this dilution aren't individuals, it's doctors and hospitals who accept Apple Health. They're paid by Apple Health, by the Medicaid system, in what are called reimbursement payments. That is, they provide a medical healthcare service, and Apple Health pays them for that service after they provided it. And Apple Health has never paid hospitals and doctors 100% of the cost of the service they provide. Let's suppose taking out an appendix is a $5,000 operation. That's what it costs the hospital and the doctor to provide it. Apple Health was paying something like $4,000 of that $5,000 cost of taking out an appendix. Well, in the last decade or so, Apple Health has been reducing the reimbursement. So now they're reducing something more like 60% of the cost of a service, sometimes less than that. So taking out an appendix costs $5,000. Apple Health is now only reimbursing something like maybe $3,000 of that amount, and that number's going down, $2,500. Hospitals and doctors can't afford to provide services for that partial reimbursement. That's the problem. And the problem in Washington State has been we've been extended Apple Health, Medicaid to so many people, but the pool of money available has stayed fairly consistent. So what the state does, what the healthcare authority does, is it waters down, dilutes the amount of the reimbursements that every individual on Apple Health gets, or the providers giving them service get. And then we've done other things here in Washington State that have diluted Apple Health even worse. We've extended the healthcare benefit to illegal aliens in Washington and other people not originally intended, able-bodied young men, single men under 30, not originally part of Apple Health. But now, because of state decisions, we've diluted that benefit. What the Big Beautiful Bill does is it says no. It says we have to return Medicaid, at least the federal dollars portion of it, back to its more original purpose. People who are disabled, people who are really down and out, single moms, older people who have no money, these people we need to return the focus to the core groups who are beneficiaries of Medicaid, Apple Health. And that, the plan is, that makes the amount of dollars to the narrower group of people better for each. Those reimbursement rates to hospitals and doctors can go up, back up toward 100% of what it costs to provide healthcare services to those people. So if you are a core beneficiary of Apple Health, the Big Beautiful Bill's changes should help the amount of money available to you to get healthcare services by cutting off illegal aliens, by cutting off able-bodied men under 30 or under 40, by cutting off people who don't, or at least weren't originally beneficiaries of the program. So a big win for Trump, a lot of hysterical exaggerations about the effects of the Big Beautiful Bill, and really the progressive left people here in Washington, they're all talking literally off the same talking points, whether it was Congresswoman Del Bene or U.S. Senator Murray, they're all literally saying the same word to exaggerate the bad effects. And it's not true. Millions are not going to die. The core beneficiaries of Medicaid are going to be better off. And the Big Beautiful Bill does other things to strengthen the domestic economy and strengthen the financial viability of the federal government. Now, we still need to get back to doing budgets in the proper way, and we still have a large national debt hanging over our heads. But I think the Big Beautiful Bill is the first step toward getting back to proper budgets and more fiscal sanity in D.C. Now, that's not all that's happened lately. That's a big win for Trump, but there have been others. The end of last week, after I recorded our previous update, the U.S. Supreme Court issued several opinions that all favor most of us here in the country, and certainly the president in his perspective on many things. One of those Supreme Court decisions said that states can limit the money they give to non-governmental organizations, NGOs, we've talked about those before. The large NGO Planned Parenthood was particularly upset by that U.S. Supreme Court ruling, but there are others that will be affected by it. The Supreme Court didn't say that NGOs can't get government money. All it said was if a state chooses not to give government money to these NGOs, it can do that. It can not give grant money to certain NGOs. So it enabled local government, at least at the state level local, to do more, have more discretion. So that's a good thing. Generally, we Washington Republicans like local control of public policy. There were other decisions last week that favored generally positions taken by President Trump and his administration. One of the decisions from the U.S. Supreme Court said, really it was a great win for parents' rights, that's what I care the most about, said that parents do have the right to opt their children out of public school courses or curriculum material that they find objectionable, and they don't have to prove why they find it objectionable. That parents simply can say, I object to this material, I'm removing my child from this class or this curriculum, and they can do that. And these are minor children we're talking about, little kids, young kids in elementary school or high school. Parents have that right. And by extension, parents have the right to know what course materials and curricula their children are being exposed to in school, which lines up very well with our Washington State Parents' Bill of Rights, which I sponsored in last year's election cycle. The legislature passed that into law and then recently gutted it this year with a bad bill, House Bill 1296, which now we're going to try to fix again by initiative. The state GOP will be working with our friends at Let's Go Washington to run an initiative to reassert the Parents' Bill of Rights. And again, that lines up very much with this recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling. So a great win for parental rights and family rights and kids, ultimately. It'll result in better education for kids, that parental involvement. And a great win for our efforts here in Washington State to promote parents' rights. And then the third U.S. Supreme Court ruling last week that favored conservatives and particularly the Trump administration had specifically something to do with the Trump administration. It dealt with these lower federal courts. So a local federal court in Spokane or in Little Rock, Arkansas or Hartford, Connecticut that tries to make an injunction against a nationwide policy put in place by the president by executive order. What the U.S. Supreme Court said is a local federal court, a local federal judge cannot make a nationwide injunction against the president, an executive order made by the president. Essentially, the U.S. Supreme Court said that's our job. That it's the U.S. Supreme Court, if anybody is going to make an injunction, that would make an injunction against the president. A lower court, a local federal court can't do that. This was a great win for Trump. A number of his executive orders had been attacked by these local radical judges, usually Biden or Obama appointees, who are trying to politicize their position and negate what the president says by executive order. So it was a great win for Trump. It has particular relevance here in Washington because the issue at hand in the lawsuit was one of Trump's executive orders about deporting illegal aliens and about basically defending immigration law, enforcing immigration law in our country. And as you know, progressive left politicians here in Washington have carved out a very legally dubious position that Washington is a sanctuary state. So what this U.S. Supreme Court ruling in defending Trump's, and really it would be any president, any future president, the president's ability to make policy by executive order is enabling and empowering the current president, Mr. Trump, to be able to fight sanctuary state and open borders policies in our country. And I expect you will see him do more of that now that he has essentially the approval, the support of the judiciary branch. The U.S. Supreme Court says he can't do that, and some random left-wing judge in some local town can't try to upend by injunction a nationwide policy put in place by the president. So I expect that will strengthen Trump and the Trump administration's ability to enforce immigration law and get rid of these disastrous sanctuary state policies that Inslee and Ferguson and the new guy Brown have tried to do here in Washington. And this comes to a point in one last thing. Just this week, the illegal alien who killed Washington State Trooper Chris Gadd in an automobile accident was sentenced to 10 years in prison for killing Trooper Gadd. Now, in my opinion, that sentence should have been stronger. This illegal alien killed a law enforcement officer, and the details get even worse. The illegal alien was drunk and high while driving and causing the accident that killed Gadd. But he got 10 years, and at least it was a sentence, because that illegal alien's attorneys, paid for by you, the taxpayers, and State Attorney General Mr. Brown and current Governor Mr. Ferguson had all supported this argument that the illegal alien shouldn't be prosecuted because of sanctuary state laws. Nonsense. And justice was at least partly served with that criminal sentence. Now, I believe the illegal alien should have gotten a life sentence for killing a law enforcement officer, but that's a conversation for another day. Justice was served there. And in general, President Trump and the movement of common sense conservatism and constitutional law and order have had great wins in the past couple of weeks with these U.S. Supreme Court rulings, with fighting the sanctuary state nonsense, and just today, earlier today, with the passage of the big, beautiful bill. Now, the progressive left is going to scream and yell and rant and rave and hoop and holler and let all kind of hysterical nonsense out. But these are good, solid wins for the rule of law and for common sense in the country and here in Washington State. So a good week leading up to Independence Day this weekend. Happy Independence Day. I recommend to everybody, as I always do, read the Declaration of Independence this weekend. It's not that long. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes. It's a great document that reasserts our foundational values as a country and as a state here in Washington. Have a great weekend, this Independence Day weekend. And until we talk again, be well, stay strong, and happy Independence Day.